Can you give a brief introduction about your expertise in AI? Let's start with like a little bit of a credentials.
When I went to college, I was doing biology and chemistry. When I graduated, I realized I didn't want to become a doctor. And this is the worst time actually in the United States to try to find a job. This was in 2008. At that time, the US was going through a recession. I don't know if it was a depression, but either way, the economy was not in a great shape. This was the housing crisis in the United States. The economy was not in a great position for me to find a job there as well. But luckily, I found one at a company that was one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. And that's why they were able to hire me. I was very good at math in high school. And as a result, I was a statistics teaching assistant at University of Miami. So that's how I got my start in this kind of medical sort of field. When it comes to development or software, a lot of that stuff it's very critical to have a good understanding of math and numbers, right? Because a lot of development requires databases and understanding how to manipulate data. And that's basically a math sort of skill set. I naturally kind of fell into this role. It was basically like an analyst role. I started to learn SQL. That was kind of the first job that I had, was to use SQL. And then as I continued to progress in my career, I just naturally kind of did a lot of learning on my own. Simultaneously, I was becoming an accountant. I had a very practical use of my software engineering skills. A lot of software engineers that you might work with, they are very technically inclined. So they can, write great code, but it's not very useful to the end user. If you were to work with a software development agency, they're going to have people that are good at, or they split up the roles as like a front-end developer or a back-end developer. So the front-end developer is kind of building the user interface, very good with making things look good and user-friendly. But the back-end developers, they're all about code, right? So they don't really care about how things look. They just make it functional. And I think just because of the situations I've been in, various jobs and stuff, I kind of blended those two skill sets together. They call it now like a full stack developer. A lot of this stuff was learned on my own. Eventually I started my own company where I was kind of like a fractional CTO. Actually, before that, I went through a development boot camp at University of Miami. It was a 6-month coding boot camp. And when I graduated, they actually asked me to be a teaching assistant for the next cohort. So after graduating, I became a teacher. Kind of reinforced all the learning that I had done previously. The reason I had done that boot camp in the first place was because I had basic development skills. It wasn't very great. I had seen the change in the development industry, I guess. There was more and more of a shift towards JavaScript as the predominant programming language. Before that, there was all sorts of different languages. Python, which is still pretty popular now, but I feel like a lot of the developers were in Java, which is a very different language. Even though it sounds similar to JavaScript, it's a very different language than JavaScript. And I kind of sensed that there was a transition towards JavaScript. And I might be getting too technical here, but the reason why JavaScript is such a great language relative to all the other languages that you might see, and I think the reason why more and more applications are moving towards JavaScript is because JavaScript you can use in both the front end and the back end. So like I was saying before, when development agencies separate back end and front end developers would be using something like Java or Python or something like that. And for the most part on the front end, developers would be using JavaScript. And what had happened over the last 6 years is that there more and more developers were using JavaScript as a back-end language called Node.js. It's just a lot easier to use one language for both the front end and the back end as opposed to using two separate languages to complete an application. So I wanted to get very familiar with the JavaScript language, went through the boot camp, then started teaching JavaScript in the boot camp, and I got very proficient with JavaScript in that period. And then as a result, I started my own company where I was basically like a fractional CTO. I was typically working with startup companies in Miami, like very early stage startup. So these are kind of like founders that didn't really have any development experience or really understanding of how to develop applications or anything like that, but they had a business idea. And so they needed like that complement and somebody that could develop the application for them. And that's kind of what I was doing for at least a year. And then COVID-19 happened. And then I decided to get a job or started working with Victor. And then in that job, I was also an analyst again, continued to expand on my skills as a developer. And AI kind of just took that to another level, right? So AI allowed me to ChatGPT when it came out in November of 2022. What that allowed developers to do is take very unstructured information and convert it into structured information, right? Before that, there was really not a very good way to do that. And what I mean by structured is like a database with a table and a bunch of columns. That's all structured, right? Everything falls into the proper cell in a spreadsheet, for example. But when you have a textbook, for example, it's just a whole bunch of words. And so that's considered unstructured. And the real breakthrough, I think, is that AI, it enables everyone to take unstructured data like text from a textbook, for example, and convert it into structured data. And I think that was the big breakthrough. I'm sure that non-developers don't really understand what I mean by that, but for developers, I think it was a huge breakthrough to incorporate AI into the development process to create all sorts of new applications.
I want to hear your honest opinion about the future of AI in business. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a second cousin, a much better developer than me, just because he's been doing it his whole life. He's also probably 15 years older than me. He's got a lot of experience and he's got his own AI business as well. And he kind of clarified that whole answer for me as well. I feel like AI is going to help businesses in one of two different ways. One is that AI is going to completely eliminate the need for humans completely. Rather than having somebody write a bunch of words, you could just have an AI LLM do that work for them. On the other hand, the other way that it could go is that AI make humans a lot more productive and efficient. For example, if I'm working as a CFO, if I'm working with 20 different businesses as a CFO, and that's the most I can do, well, if I can incorporate AI to help me do a lot of the tedious, manual, repetitive work, then instead of me only being able to help 20 different businesses, I could help maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times as many businesses, because AI is kind of extracting all the repetitive, tedious work that I no longer have to do. That's I think that AI is going to go in one of two directions: either completely eliminate tasks for people altogether, or help them become much more productive in what they're doing.
You created like two different visions for role of AI in business, which is A, it will eliminate position entirely because AI will replace the human, or B, AI will enhance the human, therefore making the human like superhumanly productive. My question to you is that, in your opinion, is that going to be per position based? So some positions will be completely eliminated while other will be made superhumans. Your personal opinion is that's going to shift towards one of these two scenarios.
Yeah, that's hard to say. It's hard to predict. I think what has kind of shocked everyone is that maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of talk about computers and technology replacing jobs altogether. When people were talking about that, the thought was that technology would replace some of the human labor, like cutting grass, for example, right? Like the very low skilled work. That's what everyone had predicted was going to be replaced first by technology, because you could just have robots do certain things. Ironically, it's actually the very skilled labor that it appears is going to be replaced first, right? One of the highest skilled jobs traditionally has been software development. AI is pretty much replacing developers as we speak. A lot of the big tech companies like Microsoft, Facebook, all of these big tech companies, they're actually, if you see their financials, they're making more money. They're becoming more valuable every year. I think Microsoft is valued at over $3 trillion now. 5 years ago, they were less than $1 trillion. Even though Microsoft and all these other tech companies are becoming more profitable and more valuable, they're still shedding a lot of the development positions at the company. And as I was saying before, traditionally, that's kind of been one of the highest skilled jobs that you could possibly have. But these are now the jobs that are going away, when before everybody was thinking it was the low skilled labor that was going to go away. Me personally, I don't really know how or which jobs are going to be affected the most. It's really too hard to tell for me. But I feel like every single position could be enhanced. That's in some way, maybe not replaced, but every single position in the economy could be enhanced with AI in some way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I am a small business owner trying to succeed here in the United States or any capitalist Western country, I am concerned how AI may disrupt my industry, or how I can actually leverage AI for my own benefit or benefit of my productivity, of my employees. What can I start doing if I haven't done anything AI wise up to this point? I'm a small business owner that have never used AI for anything other than just maybe looking at other people talking about it a lot. And I feel the hype. I'm a little bit suspicious because I'm traditional. I'm set on my ways. I've always done things the same way every time. And I'm just doing business as usual. But I'm afraid that if I don't take action now, I might be replaced or over competed by somebody else, another competing company that's using AI to compete against me. What would be your advice to me?
Well, the easiest piece of advice is to actually go and talk to somebody that's very good with AI. That's, like me, for example. I'm working with a bunch of businesses and helping them incorporate AI into their processes. I think the very low-hanging fruit in terms of how you could bring AI into a business is, I feel like, in the sales and marketing, pretty much could be used to help you find your customers, create content for those customers, all sorts of different things, really help you improve the targeting of your customers. There's all sorts of ways that AI can help specifically in sales and marketing. I think it becomes a little harder to see how AI can be incorporated into the operations of your business. But if you're talking about how do you get started, I mean, I think the easiest way is to get started within sales and marketing. And then, of course, talk to, like an AI consultant that's in the industry that's been doing this. It's very easy to find. And then even before that, what you could do is just play around with ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is now available for free for everyone. You don't even need to create an account, and just ask simple questions. I'm a owner with a business in XYZ. Help me think of new ways to sell new products to new markets and see what the results it gives you. Go from there. That's step one, I think.
Once I've done this, are there some usable AI applications out there that small business owners can immediately kind of plug and play into their operations so they can feel the benefits of AI in a short term versus having to develop their own platforms or software?
Yes, I'll actually talk about some of the tools that we use. The first tool with video, we used a tool called InVideo AI. Basically, you could put a single prompt, single sentence into the software and create up to a 15-minute video. So we use that. There's Runway to generate new videos altogether. There's Hey Gen. So we actually have a avatar that looks like us, and we can basically create any number or any length videos with our own avatar without actually having to record the video itself. Within audio, there is, I think the most popular speech software out is 11 Labs, similar to Hey Gen, where it's creating video content with your avatar. 11 Labs can create audio content with your voice. So what you do is actually you give them like a 2-minute audio. They give you a script and you actually record your audio, and then they'll take that audio and actually develop an entire voice simulation, and you can create any words or anything that you want to say in your own voice without actually speaking it. You just put in the text. And there's a bunch of music things out there, but I don't know how many businesses use music too much. Most popular one is Sono, Suno. So maybe with like videos, if you have background music that you want to put to your videos, you could use something like Sono. There is Adaptify. We are creating content with SEO in mind, search engine optimized content. We're creating 2,000 to 3,000 word articles using this software. On the social media side, called social media listening. If we are doing advisory for chiropractors or dentists or whatever, then we could use a software that is for social listening. And what that means is that there is going to be software that looks at various social media platforms, whether that's Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff. And it's actually looking for people that post about a need for a certain service or product, right? And by basically looking at every single post, I can pick out the 1 or 2 people that post about something that's relevant to what I'm selling. If I can see that they have a need, I can be the first one to actually respond to them and say, hey, this is something that I do in my business, and then connect through that way. AI is a fad or a trending word these days. A lot of people are putting AI into what they do when really it's really automation. There could be some, overlap there in terms of what is AI versus what is automation. Like we do a lot of automation with LinkedIn, for example. I think the software kind of claims itself as being AI when it's really automation. There's also chatbots. Yes, we have a chatbot on our own website, and is one that was created by the cousin I was mentioning before. It's called Custom GPT. And what Custom GPT does, there's something called a sitemap that's on most websites. Sitemap is automatically updated every time you create a new page or update your page. When that sitemap of your web page is changed, this chatbot, because it's looking at the sitemap, will update its internal information. Let's just say I post a new page or a new blog post on my website. Custom GPT, because it has access to the sitemap, will see that I posted a new page, and it will take all of the words on that new page and put it into its knowledge base. When people go on profitleap.com and go to our chatbot and ask about the latest blog post that we did, it actually has that information and can provide a response.
Remember, we used one version, but basically it was like voice bot, also an outreach bot that would call out people. And it was a 100% AI voice robot that would call people and respond to their questions or to their responses. And they would execute a sales script. It was voice AI, and it was kind of freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it freaked me out a little bit. And I think maybe I heard that it was banned in some countries because potential scams and potential issues. But also the intake, the responsive, not the proactive, but the react. So when I have a business and I have this AI bot or voice bot, can I install something like that so my customers can interact with an initial version of my script, then transfer over to the right person? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so for sales, the software that I tested out was called AIR, AIR, AI. And so what that will actually do is similar to the chatbot I was telling you about, where you basically have to give it a bunch of information, right? These chatbots by themselves are knowledgeable, but they don't have any information specific to your business or you personally. You have to feed it a bunch of information so that it knows all about you and provide customized, personalized responses. And so with AIR AI, I tested this out with selling advisory services, for example, and it would actually call the prospect and talk about our services and actually set an appointment to talk to me. Please connect it to the calendar, right? So not only is it calling the person, but it's finding out if they want to actually talk to a person to discuss those services. And if they are interested, then they will automatically schedule that person on my calendar because it's connected to Calendly, for example. In terms of intake, this is something that we could explore as well, which is that a quick response time to a prospect is the best way to close them. For example, a client or reaches out to us and it takes us a week to respond, they're probably going to find alternatives in that week period. We can't afford to spend a week to respond back to the client. And the quicker that gap is between from them messaging us to our response, the better our close rate is going to be. Because AI is on all the time and humans, we got other work to do, we go to sleep, all that stuff. We can have AI actually draft a response and send it out within 5 minutes. And then we're keeping the conversation going, keeping the prospect engaged, as opposed to them sitting on their hands, potentially looking at alternatives for a solution. That also goes to professional and technical writing. All this stuff, what I was saying, when a client or prospect, I should say, sends a message that says, oh, I'm interested in your services, could you tell me more? Automation has been in place for many years, right? You could automatically send out a template message, the same message that you probably send everybody else. You could automate that message to respond to the person within 5 minutes, but it's not personalized. And this is where AI comes in because AI can incorporate all the information that the prospect put into their message and create a completely new customized message response to that client. Before, when this was done, the prospect, when they send a message and they get a response within 5 minutes, it's pretty easy for them to determine if this was, just a random template that is being sent out to everybody. But now with AI, it feels much more human, right? So the response back that they get, it appears like whoever wrote this actually knows what their situation is. They know their pain points. And so the messages are just much better, leading to higher close rates, of course.
What is in the industry right now to help business owners analyze, organize, and make decisions about their business data? I personally haven't seen anything out there that does a decent job of helping business owners make intelligent use of their data. What I see more often is overwhelmed, overworked small business owners that are using probably 10 or 20% of all the information they have available, and they're making partially informed decisions based mostly on experience, gut feelings, and a little bit of information. Tell me what you think about this problem and if there's anything out there to solve it.
Yes, it's a big problem. I don't think that this is really a problem that big corporations face, but for small business owners, especially like solo owners that are just starting out, they're oftentimes bogged down with work that they have to do, or really the initial problem is just having the data at all. They're so busy doing a whole bunch of things that they're not even tracking the things that they need to track. If you don't even have the data, then there's nothing really you can do other than use your gut instinct. But assuming that they do have the software and they are tracking the information that they need to track to improve their businesses, then they don't even really rely on that data sometimes, right? Or they don't know how to interpret it, or they don't have good reporting to actually do it. For example, there's a lot of software out there that has the information, but oftentimes the software doesn't actually put the critical pieces of information from the data that the owner needs to see. The owner has to be able to figure out how to actually use the software. How do I run the reports? What settings do I put into the report in order to generate the reports that I need to make decisions? That's something that an analyst does. And oftentimes the owner, especially if it's like in professional services, they didn't spend their education learning about how to do this stuff, right? They learned how to be a doctor or a dentist or whatever, and they didn't really know how to do this very well. In terms of AI, there's a lot of software out there that has this feature. I think that they call it text to SQL. A user will put in their text, like how many sales did I make in the last month? And then the AI will actually take that natural language and convert it into computer code. In other words, SQL. SQL stands for structured query language. And that is basically the language of databases. You use SQL to take information in databases, extract the information that you want. And with AI, there's this feature called text to SQL. You can convert natural language into SQL and bring back the information that you want. Before, that had never been possible. But now with AI, you can do all that stuff. And that's a common thing. I'm sure there's many companies out there that do that. What we're doing at Profit Leap and with Huxley is taking that an extra step further, right? So with text to SQL, you're actually just querying one specific database. For example, in the example that I used with how many sales did I make, the SQL is actually looking at the sales table. And it's not very sophisticated at this point to actually combine multiple different tables. If I have a table that has sales and I have another table that has all of my products and another table that has all of my employees, the text to SQL doesn't combine all of those tables into one query. And maybe at some point, I imagine that it could get to that point where it's able to join multiple tables and provide a very sophisticated answer. But even beyond that, what Huxley is be more forward-looking, right? So we're not just providing information, we're actually providing a prescription. Like, what should this business do? If we do X, Y, Z, what would happen to sales? At this point, there's nothing out there that even comes close. And I imagine that it's probably going to be able to do something like this, maybe with the next version of ChatGPT. But because this is a problem that's so complex, I haven't seen any competitors or software companies out there that's trying to not only just provide information from databases, but also provide the prescription of what to do. Goals of the business owner need to be incorporated into the AI model in order to provide the best feedback possible.
I love when you said about it's not only showing the information, is actually creating a prescription of what needs to be done with that information.
Yeah, so our goal with Huxley is to help business owners with decision making, really. The way that we go about doing that, we're taking all the information that the business is supposed to be collecting, typically through software. Generally speaking, most businesses have accounting software, and all of this should be software online, of course, but you got the accounting records, which has all your financial information, and then you have usually a marketing software, and that's going to have your leads, your sales, where these leads and sales are coming from, the value of these deals. And then you're going to have operational software, and this is to track the progress of your jobs or your orders or whatever the case may be. There could be some other things, like maybe you have a payroll system that's going to be tracking all of your employees. And so with Huxley, what we're doing is we are connecting all of these different softwares together, also incorporating the context of your business. So that is, where you're located, how many offices do you have, what are your goals as a business owner? Are you trying to sell your business in the next 1 to 5 years? Are you trying to double your revenue? Are you trying to improve profitability? Are you trying to expand into other locations, etc.? All of that stuff, we incorporate all of that context in addition to all of the data from your software into Huxley. And Huxley is very forward-looking. I think that's one of the key critical things that we're trying to accomplish with Huxley, which is that most of the software and data and business intelligence tools out there are historical looking. They're looking at what you've done in the past. And maybe in simple sense, what they're trying to also do is kind of forecast. So what they do is they look at your historical data, and then they can kind of see what the trend line is. For the last 10 months, for example, if revenue has grown 5% every month for the last 10 months, it's pretty easy to kind of predict or forecast that your revenue for the next couple months is going to grow 5%. But that's very basic sort of forecasting. Huxley, we're trying to do something much more complex. In addition to kind of forecasting where you're going to be, we have to incorporate sales could go up much more than 5% if we double our marketing spend. It's a lot more sophisticated than just seeing basic trend lines. And like I said, it's also incorporating your goals, which to me and Victor, these are the most important things when we come up with a plan, a forward-looking plan of what this business needs to do.
what Huxley is in one sentence.
Huxley is Profit Leap's AI advisor that connects to all business data and understands the owner's goals to provide tailored strategic and financial guidance for growth.
Я твой работник.